Hey there, this is Discordant Football, and this is Best 11s, a series where I pick the best possible Premier League 11 with a different set of parameters each week. This week, our team is the Short Kings. The rules for this week are that any player I choose has to be 176 centimeters or shorter, which is under 5'10", and as always, they must have at least one appearance in the Premier League in their career. One more thing before we start, this is the team without any names shown. If you want to try and guess as many as you can before I reveal the names as we go through, please feel free. And these are all the clubs who they played the most seasons for in the Premier League. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory, so we'll jump straight into it. First up is my goalkeeper, and this was both the easiest and the hardest decision to make on the whole team. Technically, it wasn't even really a decision, as my goalkeeper, Clive Baker, is actually the only Premier League keeper in history to be under 5'10". He appeared for Ipswich Town at the very beginning of the Premier League in 1992, and he was with them until 1994. He's most known for a period at Barnsley, where he had 291 appearances with the Yorkshire team. He's actually one of only very few players to have played for both Norwich and Ipswich, going across and bridging the gap between the rivalries. Technically speaking, there were no other players I could consider, although other short Premier League goalkeepers of note include Fabian Barthez and Matt Ryan, but Clive Baker comes in the shortest of them all by quite a distance at 175 centimetres. Next up is our left back. This was one of the positions with many to choose from, and therefore I was able to slot in a real Premier League legend in Dennis Irwin. He's 173 centimetres tall. He appeared for both Man United and Wolves in the Premier League, and the Irishman was the only Man United player to feature in both of their European Cup wins in the 90s. There were quite a few other short left-backs to choose from. Some others who were considered were Baines and Clichy. Ashley Cole just missed out on the height requirement by 1 centimetre, as did a number of other left-backs. Centre-back was easily the hardest position to fill on the team. My first centre-back didn't even really play centre-back in the Premier League. Starting at West Ham and then moving to Liverpool, Javier Mascherano was known as a central midfielder in the Premier League, holding just in front of the back four. However, in his time at Barcelona, he regularly filled in at centre-back, and due to my height requirements, that was enough for me to consider him as one of my two best options in the team. He made 99 appearances in the Premier League, and was of course famously involved, along with Carlos Tevez, in West Ham breaking rule B13, which ended up them being fined a world record £5.5 million in 2007. My other centre-back played for both Chelsea and Leicester. Frank Sinclair did have centre-back experience in the Premier League, although he often filled in at right-back as well. He made 288 Premier League appearances across both Chelsea and Leicester, and he also made 28 appearances in his international career for Jamaica. He provides the tall aerial presence at the heart of my defence, which his team is sorely lacking, standing at a whopping 175 centimetres. Really, I considered every single defensive midfielder who was under 5'10" as another centre-back, but I think I came out with a decent pairing given my options here. Even traditional fullbacks who had filled in at centre-back in a back five before, like Cesar Azpilicueta, were actually too tall for this team, so I was left in a real pickle at centre-back, and I'd say it's definitely the weakest area of the team outside of the goalkeeper for sure. Now, a controversial entry in the team is right-back Lee Dixon. This is due to there being great discrepancies in his reported height across the internet. I have decided to use one source for my players' heights, and that's the official Premier League website, as I consider that to be the best possible source you can get on this, really. Everything else just seems to be copying a different source, and you sort of have two major splits, but the Premier League website does list Lee Dixon at 173 centimetres, which is drastically shorter than the 178 centimetres which he is listed at on his Wikipedia page. There were other good options in Zabaleta and Evra, among others, to take his place if he does turn out to be too tall and get ruled out of the league, but I'm guessing we'll be okay, and I'll reach out to him and see if I can get any clarification on his official height. Lee Dixon was a stalwart for Arsenal in the 90s and into the 2000s with 305 appearances and 114 clean sheets for Arsenal. Now to the centre of midfield, where we have an absolute peak unit and It's actually where two of our shortest players in the team reside. So, for our first centre midfielder, we have N'Golo Kante. The little Frenchman needs no introduction. With 227 appearances with both Leicester and Chelsea, he is our tied shortest player at 168 centimetres. And partnering in beside him is another angry short man in Paul Scholes. This one actually shocked me a lot in that Paul Scholes is just as short as N'Golo Kante. So they are both 168 centimetres. He made all of his appearances for Manchester United, totaling 499, which is a crazy amount. I guess I always knew Paul Scholes was short. He always had that energy, but I didn't know he was that short. It's kind of crazy that he is tied shortest on this team. Other central midfielders considered included James Milner, Claude Makelele and Luka Modric, but I ultimately don't think you can argue with our central midfield's resume, and they'll do a great job of holding down the fort with our very attacking front four to come. Out on the left we have Eden Hazard, standing at 175 centimetres. This short Chelsea player beats out another short Chelsea player in Zola for the left wing. While his goals or assist numbers may not quite reflect his brilliance in the Premier League, there's no doubt that he's earned a place on this team when you look at the alternatives, in my opinion. One of the great all-time Premier League dribblers who played on some shockingly defensive teams under both Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho. He'll be looking to own the left flank, while he's backed up defensively by Dennis Irwin. And opposite him on the right is another ex-Chelsea player, but he is most known for his time at Liverpool. It's Mohamed Salah. He is also 175 centimetres, carrying on our theme of matching pairs. Both of our wingers the same heights, and both of our centre midfielders the same height. After a very brief spell with Chelsea in the Premier League, he flourished with Liverpool, scoring 156 goals in only 260 appearances at the time of recording, which is a goals per game ratio of 0.6 goals a game, which is quite frankly ridiculous. Silva and Foden were also considered for the wide spots, but these are two top-notch players, although they could be outperformed in the future by someone like Foden. As of the time of recording, I think these are pretty solid picks. And so we move on to our two strikers. In my mind, for this team at least, this is more of sort of the half-centre attacking midfielder. Dropping in a bit deeper, we've got Wayne Rooney, standing at 176 centimetres and playing for both Everton and Manchester United in the Premier League. He made 491 appearances with 208 goals, and probably one of the most famous goals in Premier League history, following up only someone else on this team. Again, I was a little bit surprised by how short Wayne Rooney was. I never really considered him as a short player. I wouldn't have said tall, but if you asked me to guess, I would have guessed 5'11", 6 foot. So I was very surprised to see him come in at 5'9" and 176 centimetres. And he is partnered by a more out-and-out striker up front in Sergio Aguero, owner of the most famous goal in Premier League history, in all likelihood. He made 275 appearances with 184 goals up front for Man City, never leaving a very dominant team for most of the time period that he was there. There were other strong strikers to consider. Michael Owen, Robbie Keane, Richard Wright. Sorry, not Richard Wright, that's the goalkeeper, isn't it? Ian Wright, that's the one. But ultimately, I think Aguero and Rooney is a very good partnership. Ian Wright's probably got the strongest case outside of those two, but I think they just edge it out, although it could be my late 2000s bias showing through. Ultimately, there is no place for famous short Premier League players such as Gianfranco Zola, Tariq Lamptey, Aaron Lennon, or Sean Wright-Phillips. But in terms of the strength of our team, I think we have a very good one here. The team will be managed by another famous short player, Gianfranco Zola, who was a manager in the Premier League for a number of years, and therefore is ideal to lead the team. As the series goes on, I will be ranking all of the 11s that we create. Obviously, as this is the first episode in the series, the Short Kings come in at number 1. But I do think we have a very strong team overall here, and they're probably likely to rest towards the top of any table as we go on. So, just to recap, for the Short Kings, we have an average height of 173.2 centimetres, an average amount of appearances in the Premier League of 279. I'd say our team weakness is pretty clear in this one, and pretty expected given the restrictions on the team. And that is our centre-back partnership and our goalkeeper are pretty weak, and we will be susceptible to a lot of set pieces. But everything else is very strong. We have a great central midfield duo, 2 legendary fullbacks, and an incredible front 4 that should get us a lot of goals. So if we're able to control possession, hopefully not allow too many crosses, I see good things for this team. There were 10 unique Premier League teams represented with our selections, and those are Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton, Ipswich, Leicester, Liverpool, Manchester United, Manchester City, West Ham and Wolves. So, thank you very much for joining me for the first episode of this series. It took a lot of work to get looking even to the acceptable level as it is now. I hope to make it look better in the future and increase all of the production value, but if you are here listening to this, you are one of my very first listeners and watchers, and I really thank you for joining me on this journey. Ultimately, if things go well, I'd love to keep going, make it to 20 teams or so, and then I was thinking perhaps building the teams in Football Manager or something similar and letting them play out a season and see how they actually rank. But really, I just wanted to make these videos as a way to go back through Premier League memory lane, look at some names maybe you've not thought about as often as you have, people like Frank Sinclair and Javier Mascherano. And in future episodes with weirder restrictions, I'm sure we'll be going a lot deeper into the memory bank. I know there were a lot of Premier League greats in this one, so maybe there weren't as many interesting names, but this is the first in the series and really just sort of a proof of concept of the whole thing. So if you are listening, thank you very much. I hope you did enjoy, and I hope you'll join me again very soon. I'll be trying to do these as regularly as I can, hopefully at least once a week. Thank you if you are listening. Thanks for being one of my first listeners. I'll see you next time.